Hello, my name is Adam Gifford. I'm the new co-chair of the 2nd District Community Relations Committee. And I would like to thank you all for coming. Why don't we start off the evening as we start off all of our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this point, I would like to introduce Pastor Grady Stevenson to give our invocation.
Thank you, Adam. Let us bow for a moment of prayer. Our Father, the Creator of all mankind, we first would like to pause and say thank you. We thank you, first of all, for our life, our health, and our strength. We thank you for this day that you have provided for us. And Father, your word tells us that we should rejoice in the day in which you give us. And so tonight, as we come to celebrate, we also come to rejoice. We thank you for opportunities. We thank you for relationships. We thank you, God, for the men and women that come to serve and protect us each and every day of our lives. We ask that you would be with them, protect them, guide them, give them wisdom. So we ask in your Son's name, thank God, and amen.
At this point, I would like to acknowledge the dignitaries in attendance, the Honorable Mayor Frank G. Jackson, Safety Director Michael McGrath, Police Chief Calvin Williams, Deputy Chief Executive Officer Joellen O'Neill, Commander Harold Patel, Executive Director of the Community Relations Board Grady Stevenson, Councilman Kerry McCormick, Tony Brancatelli, Kevin Kelly, Brian Cummins, and Matthew Zone, Michael McDonald from the 2nd District Community Relations Liaison, Aaron Stone, Region 2 Supervisor, and Shannon Musson, Region 2 Prosecutor, both from the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office. And at this point, I'd like to introduce Commander Tom Stocco.
Thank you, Adam. Welcome, everyone, to the annual 2nd District Community Relations Awards ceremony. It's very special to me to have the opportunity to come out here and honor our officers who daily put their lives on the line and work hard to serve and protect the citizens, the businesses, their fellow officers here in the 2nd District. Our officers serve very humbly and they sacrifice a lot. We really can't appreciate what they do, the sacrifices to themselves, sacrifices to their families. It's also truly a joy to be able to recognize the citizens, the businesses, our community stakeholders at this ceremony. They are as much a part of our community as the officers are, and without them, we would not be as successful as we are. So they have a stake in the safety of our community as well as our officers do. This ceremony is a very small token of the gratitude that we show to our officers and that we show to the community. So thank you for being here, and let's get on with the ceremony. If I could now, I'd like to introduce the Chief of Police, Calvin Williams, to say a few words.
Thanks, Commander. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You guys seem like you're not awake out there. Well, first of all, I'd like to say congratulations to the award recipients, both our officers and our citizens. You know, it's always good when we come together and recognize the great work that we do, and especially the great work that we do in partnership, because it doesn't happen alone with police officers. We have to have our community involved in this. And when you see things like this and you hear some of the stories that you're going to hear today, you know, it epitomizes that relationship that we have with our community, regardless of what people say out there. I know in the 2nd District there's an excellent community police relations going on, and we try to duplicate that throughout the city. So you guys definitely deserve all the praise and the recognition that you're going to get tonight. So with that said, I'm going to get out of the way so we can continue the program. But thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Chief. Now I'd like to introduce Executive Director of the Community Relations Board, Pastor Grady Stevenson.
Thank you, Commander. You know, back in the 1940s, somebody had the bright idea of developing a community relations board for the city of Cleveland, the first one in the country. And because of that, and with the idea of building amicable relationships in the city of Cleveland. And so on a night like tonight, when I see citizens, police officers, mayor, councilmen, and the community come together to celebrate the great work that we do, it makes me proud to be sitting in this seat as the Executive Director of Community Relations. What we do for our citizens and for our city, you should be proud of every day you slip that uniform on, or every day you walk out your house and think about your neighborhood and how you want it to be the best neighborhood in the city of Cleveland. And so to be here tonight to watch the honorees receive their awards and our citizens be honored tonight, it is a pleasure for me and our department to be a part of this ceremony. And so I just want to tell you thank you for all the great work that you do, for the sacrifices that you make for this community, and for the people who live, work, and play in the city of Cleveland. And thank the mayor for the vision that he gives us each and every day to go out and do the jobs that we do. Thank you, and God bless you in your work.
Thank you. We're fortunate here in the 2nd District to have very supportive and a very influential city council people. The 5 gentlemen seated to my left really have been extremely supportive of our officers, working very closely with our CDCs and CDOs, as well as our officers. Each year they contact me and ask me to have the opportunity to come up here and recognize the officers for a job well done. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to get them started first. I'll call the officers to come up, and then the council people come up, say a few words, and we have a nice award from them. First off is Councilman Matt Zone from Ward 15, Lieutenant Michael Betley, Sergeant Frank Woima, Detective Robert Norman, Patrol Officer Charles Bartlebaugh, Patrol Officer Vasily Nan, and Patrol Officer Eric Thompson would step forward.
So thank you, Commander. I guess I'll say a few brief words and then pass out these awards and go on to the next one. Just a little bit about where you're at. First of all, I'm glad you're here at a different space. Ole is great, but it's great to have you here at Our Lady Mount Carmel. Actually, one of the officers who's being honored this morning went to grade school here, Officer Correa. Michael, real proud of you. Watch you grow up. You've turned out to be a fine young man. And so welcome here to Our Lady Mount Carmel. You know, 6 extraordinary individuals who were recognized, and Officer Nan, Sergeant Wyma, and Lieutenant Bentley have really been hitting a part of my neighborhood that's really challenging, the West 80s neighborhood, and I want to thank them for what they do. You know, Detective Norman has really been stepping it up on the investigative side, and I appreciate what they do, but I want to share one story that really represents what police officers do and go over and above and don't sometimes necessarily get the recognition. We had an individual, humble guy, who was robbed, and his wallet was taken, and the money was taken out of inside. And Officer Charles Bartlebaugh took $100 out of his own pocket and put that in his wallet. Actually, the guy found a wallet with more money than he actually had when it was lost, and he gave it to him, and Officer Eric Thompson was with him. But you know, this is the kind of selfless act that they do all the time, that doesn't get printed in the paper, that doesn't go on TV, and so we cannot do the job of what we do as legislators and elected officials keeping our seats straight. It's really these men and women of the police department that do a great job. Will all of you please join me in giving a warm appreciation to these fine officers.
You probably want to get up and get a photo. All right, thank you, Councilman Zone. Next up, Ward 14, Councilman Brian Cummins. If Patrol Officer Patty Katinsky, Patrol Officer Joshua McCoy, Patrol Officer Courtney Evans, and Patrol Officer Thomas Cloak would step forward.
As they come up, I want to say what I say every year, which is I want to not only thank them, but I also want to make remarks really pointing out in thanking the family members of all the officers. We know how challenging it can be to send your loved ones out every day, as it was said earlier, to protect and serve the city of Cleveland. And it's not really without the support of their family members, their husbands, their wives, their mothers, fathers, and children, of course. And I really want to call for a big round of applause for all the family members that are here to honor these officers. Patrol Officer Patty Katinsky, Joshua McCoy, as well as the team of officers Courtney Evans and Thomas Cloak, fill basically a role of a designated crime car for both the afternoon and the midnight shifts. And they lead their respective shifts almost every month, and they actually compete with each other month over month relative to arrests and weapon seizures. So I really just want to thank these officers for their great intuitive as well as fearless dedication in representing the 2nd District, and particularly the citizens of Ward 14. So please give them another round of applause. Some stats, yeah, please. No. And I'm gonna, and I forgot to mention some of the stats because you guys compete, so we might as well say that. So for Cloak and Evans, in the first 11 months of 2017, these officers registered the following: 87 arrests, with 50 of which 55 were felonies, 48 narcotic seizures, 93 citations issued, and a total of 25 firearms seized. Give them a round of applause. Now, Katinsky and McCoy, first 11 months, 2017, these officers registered the following: 156 arrests, 120 of which were felony arrests, 28 narcotic seizures, 274 citations, and a total of 40 firearms seized. Thank you so much. Again.
Thank you, Councilman. If the following officers, Lieutenant Steve Cornacchione, Sergeant Patty Coleman, Detective John Graves, Detective Robert Beveridge, Detective Janet Murphy, and Detective Daniel Lentz would step forward. Ward 13 Council President Kevin Kelly.
Thank you, sir. All right. Good evening, everybody, and thanks for coming out tonight. Tonight we're going to spend a lot of time, and deservedly so, talking about solving some very horrific crimes and some things that happened and took some fantastic police work, and I want to thank everybody for that. But I also want to thank you for being part of the 2nd District. I'm proud to live in the 2nd District. Whatever happens, however they redraw lines sometime in the future, it doesn't really matter. I just know that I'm going to retire from the house that I'm in that's in the 2nd District, and I'm going out feet first. And as I said, there's been a tremendous amount of heroic acts that we're celebrating tonight. But I guess I want to celebrate the 2nd District, acknowledge the 2nd District for the things that just the way business happens on a day-to-day basis. The fact that I live in a community that I feel safe in, that I live in a community where my daughter can ride her scooter to her friend's house, and I don't really think about it until she comes home. Sometimes I forget to lock my door at night, and I don't get up to lock it. I probably should. Don't tell anybody that. But I feel a sense of living in a safe community, and I say that with full knowledge that things aren't perfect. And I see some of the folks that have responded in my particular neighborhood. Things aren't perfect and things happen, but I know when those things happen, I can call the 2nd District and it will be dealt with. And that's what happened. And I want to celebrate tonight one of those such occasions. This summer, the neighborhood around Low Park, Ralph, Silverdale, and others were terrorized by a small group of not so nice people. And you forget, because like I just mentioned, I have a sense of safety in my home, in my community. You forget what happens and how people respond when somebody breaks into your house. And then when it happens again, and then when it happens again, and then when it happens again. And the community was understandably on edge and feeling very uncomfortable and unsafe in their homes. Well, I don't know exactly the number of cars that were deployed. I don't know exactly the number of undercovers that were deployed to this neighborhood. I don't know all the work that went into working with the Fugitive Task Force and working with the U.S. Marshal, but I know that the 2nd District responded. I know that they were there to walk around with me. I know they were there to assist in the arrest that brought these not so nice people to justice and restored that neighborhood to the type of neighborhood that I live in, where people's kids are free to ride their bikes, people feel safe in their homes, which really is an expectation that every citizen should have, and I do have that because of the officers and everybody in this room. So thank you all very much for everything you do. On that arrest of the Atkins family and all the associated people, I want to recognize Steve Cornacchione, Sergeant Patty Coleman, Detective Janet Murphy, Detective Bob Beveridge, Detective Daniel Lentz, and I want to make also recognize a special shout out to Detective Graves, who is just relentless when we have an issue with a problem bar, and those of you that deal with this know how that can terrorize a neighborhood as well. I mean, this is a person that is at every hearing, that goes to Columbus, that really works hand in hand to shut these problem bars down. So with that, I'm done talking. I want to thank you. I want to just get a little something for you. I don't have a plaque. I get some Indians tickets and some Browns tickets.
All right, thank you, Councilman. Next, being honored by Ward 12 Councilman Anthony Brancatelli, our Sergeant Frank Woima and Sergeant Mitchell Sheehan.
It's great to be here to recognize all these officers. If I had Council President's money, I'd be giving an award to every single one of you, but I don't have Council President Kelly's money. So, but I do want to recognize a couple of outstanding officers. Under their leadership, their respective units led all other district vice and community service units in arrests, cases made, search warrants, and enforcement activity. And that's an amazing testament to the hard work that they do all the time. And it's not, we don't measure success just on the number of arrests. We also measure success on how often they respond when we do have these quality of life issues, how often they're able to show a very strong presence. And many of the officers here today, you see them out on the streets all the time. People love to say, I haven't seen an officer in weeks. But these officers are the kind that they'll say, well, I was just down your street this afternoon and here's what I saw. And these folks have to take a stand back and said, you know what, you are paying attention, you are out there every day. So I wanted to make sure I recognize a couple officers who've been out there every single day, out there making many arrests, out there improving the quality of life in our neighborhoods. So thank you very much today.
Thank you, Councilman. And last but not least, Ward 3 Councilman Kerry McCormick will honor these 4 officers. If Detective Robert Norman, Patrol Officer Charles Bartlebaugh, Patrol Officer Matthew Zooks, and Patrol Officer Michael Raspberry would step forward.
Alrighty, well, good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Kerry McCormick, and I have the privilege of serving downtown Cleveland in the near west side neighborhoods of Ohio City, Tremont, and the Stockyards neighborhood on Cleveland City Council. Before I read off these very, very worthy awards, I also want to recognize the man that's been running the show tonight, Commander Stocko. Commander has been an incredible ally to us on council and to our communities, responding swiftly and quickly to the concerns of our communities and making sure that community relations and contact is a priority. So thank you, Commander Stocko. In Ward 3, we're seeing a lot of great growth. We're seeing our neighborhoods revitalized, new small businesses opening throughout our neighborhoods, folks moving in and choosing to live in our communities, which is helping us rebuild the city of Cleveland. None of that can happen, though, without the dedication of the Cleveland Police Department and our safety forces, making sure that our businesses and our homes and our people are safe and protected. And the folks we have in front of us today are a prime example of people and our officers that go above and beyond to make sure that happens. In July of this year, we had a rash of break-ins in Ohio City. Upwards to 40 or more burglaries that went throughout our neighborhood. Similar to what you heard earlier, this really shakes a community and makes people fear for themselves, their families, and their property. But for the officers in front of us, and Detective Robert Norma, Patrol Officer Michael Raspberry, Patrol Officer Charles Bartlebaugh, and Patrol Officer Matthew Zooks were a key part of that team that took down the folks that were terrorizing the Ohio City neighborhood and put a sense of peace back into our community in Ohio City. Throughout that time, again, of over 40 burglaries, the group that was arrested, over 15 individuals that were either arrested or identified in connection with these crimes, were taunting the community and the police department on social media with weapons and otherwise, and again, hitting many homes in the neighborhood. But again, our officers here tonight were dedicated to stopping that. So not only do I stand in front of you today to thank our officers and all of our officers, but for the 30,000 people, citizens of the city of Cleveland, that I represent, they also say thank you to each and every one of you for keeping our community safe. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilman McCormick. Before we get into the meat of the program, I wanted to acknowledge a few volunteers and a few people that worked really hard to put this ceremony together. First and foremost, Lieutenant Michael Betley. Lieutenant Betley, as you know, is my administrative lieutenant, worked hard, spent countless hours, probably and also as a result of my OCD and wanting this to run perfectly. So I owe him a debt of gratitude. Lieutenant Betley, thank you very much. Additionally, Lieutenant Johnny Ham from our Community Services Unit spent a lot of time, helped me go over the program, write it. We wanted it to sound just right for you guys to honor the officers, honor the citizens that we're recognizing here tonight. So thank you, Lieutenant Ham. And then Detective Amy Harper from my administrative staff. She recently took a position in our detective unit. She's helping out one last time at our award ceremony, and she's been a great help to us. Amy, thank you very much. So we'll get right into the heart of the program. If officers Teresa Cavett, Carl Dooley, Matthew Kavanaugh, Thomas Toole, and Detective John Graves could step forward. Yeah. On December 21st, 2015, Detective John Graves responded to a vehicle flipped and a male shot. Upon his arrival, Detective Graves discovered the male driver had been shot and fled the scene. Detective Graves located the driver, and upon seeing the detective, the driver attempted to further flee on foot. Detective Graves was able to stop the driver as patrol officers Teresa Cavett, Carl Dooley, Matthew Cavanaugh, and Thomas Toole arrived. The male had been shot in the inner thigh and was losing massive amounts of blood, and his forearm was severely cut from the crash and bleeding heavily. Realizing the severity of the male's injuries, the officers immediately began administering first aid. EMS arrived and transported the male to the hospital for treatment. Hospital personnel stated that the male had lost a large amount of blood, and without the officer's first aid, the male likely would have died. Officers, for your courageousness and your heroism, we honor you. Thank you. I'll let you guys. So officers Cavett, Dooley, Cavanaugh, and Toole received the Commander's Commendation, and Detective John Graves received the Special Commendation. Will Detective Maria Matos and Mr. Dwayne Webb please step forward? I know Mr. Webb could not be in attendance today. On Friday, May 26, 2017, Detective Maria Matos from the 1st District was on her way home after work. Detective Matos noticed the vehicle in front of her was not moving and the male driver appeared unconscious. Suddenly, the passenger got out and repeatedly yelled, "Heroin overdose." Detective Matos immediately notified police radio and began life-saving efforts. Mr. Dwayne Webb was working nearby when he noticed Detective Matos attempting to administer aid to a male in a vehicle that had overdosed. Mr. Webb and Detective Matos safely removed the male from the vehicle and administered Narcan. The male regained consciousness and was transported to the hospital for further treatment. Mr. Webb and Detective Matos, thank you for your service and congratulations. And Detective Matos was honored with the Commander's Commendation, and Mr. Dwayne Webb, the Citizen's Commendation. Will Patrol Officer Michael Correa please step forward? Officer Correa is being honored with a special commendation. On Sunday, January 1st, 2017, Patrol Officer Michael Correa and his partner responded to a broadcast of a female attempting to commit suicide by jumping from a second-story roof. Upon arrival, Officer Correa immediately began communicating with the distraught female through the second-story window. Officer Correa calmly talked to the female and established an excellent rapport with her. Officer Correa compassionately talked the female off the roof and back into the safety of the second-story room. Officer Correa then escorted the female into the EMS unit for transport to the hospital for further treatment. Officer Correa, for your service, we honor you. Thank you. Receiving the Special Commendation Award will Officer Thomas Toole and Officer Ismael Quintana please step forward. On Wednesday, August 31st, 2016, Patrol Officer Ismael Quintana and Patrol Officer Thomas Toole responded to a vehicle crash involving a male ejected from a vehicle. Upon their arrival, the officers located a male suffering from a severe leg wound that was bleeding profusely. Officer Toole retrieved the first aid kit from the zone car as Officer Quintana comforted the male. The officers worked together administering life-saving first aid to the injured male. The emergency medical service unit that transported the injured male to the hospital praised the officers' quick response and use of life-saving first aid techniques. Physicians at the hospital reported that the officers' efforts significantly contributed to the male's survival. Officers, congratulations. Receiving the Special Commendation Award will Patrol Officer Scott Sistek, Jerry Krakowski, Brandon Greer, David Gallagher, and Ryan Miranda. Please step forward. On Tuesday, March 14th, 2017, Patrol Officer Scott Sistek responded to assignment for a truck driven into the wall of a drugstore. This was consistent with recent smash and grab thefts of ATMs. Upon arrival, Officer Sistek located the unoccupied truck with the keys in the ignition and the driver's side door ajar. Officer Sistek observed a set of footprints in the freshly fallen snow leading away from the driver's side area towards nearby houses. Suspecting that the footprints belonged to the fleeing suspects, Officer Sistek notified radio and began to follow the tracks through yards and over fences. Patrol Officer Jerry Krakowski, Brandon Greer, David Gallagher, and Ryan Miranda heard Officer Sistek's radio assignment and responded to assist. The officers coordinated efforts and followed the footprints to a home where two males matching the description of the suspects were spotted attempting to hide in the backyard, one of them in a trash can. The suspects attempted to flee on foot but were cornered and arrested without further incident. Security video confirmed that the arrested males were involved in the attempted smash and grab. Officers, thank you for your service and congratulations. Your dad here, Jerry? No. Next time. All right. Receiving the Special Commendation Award will Patrol Officer William Mazer please step forward. On Sunday, June 19, 2016, Patrol Officer William Mazer was assigned to the Mobile Field Force Unit for the watch party of Game 7 of the NBA Finals. When the Cavaliers won the NBA championship, a large group of revelers took over West 6th Street. EMS was called for a male struck in the face with a bottle and a female having an asthma attack and unable to breathe. A responding fire truck was overwhelmed by the crowd and forced to stop while people climbed on the fire truck. Officer Mazer kept the fire truck clear of people so the fire personnel could tend to the medical needs uninterrupted. When the firemen were trying to leave, Officer Mazer cleared a path through the revelers so the fire truck could leave safely. Officer Mazer, thank you for your service and congratulations. Receiving a Chief's letter is Detective William Miranda. Detective William Miranda is an integral part of the 2nd District Vice Unit. A veteran detective, he's looked upon by his peers and by zone car personnel for direction when it comes to vice activity. In April of 2016, Vice Detective William Miranda received a citizen's complaint alleging aggressive drug sales at an address in Cleveland's Ward 14. Following a nearly month-long investigation, Detective Miranda gathered sufficient probable cause to obtain a search warrant for the address under surveillance. Upon the execution of that search warrant, 2 handguns, quantities of heroin and crack cocaine, and over $2,500 in U.S. currency was seized. 2 males with extensive criminal history were arrested for violation of state drug laws and for being violent felons in possession of a firearm. Detective Miranda, thank you for your service. Receiving the Special Commendation Award will Patrol Officer Joseph Wright, William Mazer, and Michael Raspberry please step forward. On Monday, July 25th, 2016, Patrol Officer Joseph Wright was touring for a suspect in a recent shooting. Officer Wright observed an auto commit a stop sign violation and attempted to conduct a traffic stop. The auto sped off and made several turns before Officer Wright got close enough to broadcast a clear description and registration information. The auto began driving recklessly as it was determined that the auto was involved in the earlier shooting. The suspect abandoned the auto and fled on foot. Patrol Officer William Mazer and Patrol Officer Michael Raspberry responded to assist with searching for the suspect that had fled. The officers observed the suspect assaulting a hospital police officer on the grounds at the entrance to the hospital emergency room at Metro Hospital. The officers were able to save the hospital police officer from being strangled and place the suspect in handcuffs. Officers, thank you for your courage and thank you for your service. Receiving the Special Commendation, don't walk too far, Joe, Patrol Officer Joseph Wright. On August 25th, 2016, Patrol Officer Joseph Wright was flagged down by an off-duty officer who stated a neighbor's bicycle was stolen and he knew where the bicycle was located. Officer Wright was led to the house where the bicycle was. Officer Wright spoke to the residents and was able to identify a suspect. Through further investigation over several days, Officer Wright was able to determine that the bicycle thief also burglarized the bicycle owner's house. Officer Wright interviewed the suspect, who subsequently admitted to the crime, and a number of others. Officer Wright recovered most of the stolen property. Officer Wright, thank you for your dedication and service. Receiving a Special Commendation Award will Detective Lawrence Smith please step forward. On September 6, 2016, Detective Lawrence Smith received information from a confidential, reliable informant that a suspect was selling heroin and armed with a high-powered rifle. Detective Smith spotted the suspect driving with another male in a vehicle and requested marked zone cars to assist. With the assistance of other officers, both the driver and the passenger were apprehended after fleeing from the vehicle when the backup officers arrived. Detective Smith recovered loaded handguns that were hidden under the driver's and passenger seats. Both males were found to have extensive and violent criminal histories and charged with multiple felonies. Detective Smith, thank you for your service. Receiving the Commander Citizen Commendation will Mr. Nathaniel Oliver, Mr. Michael Woolard, Mr. Gerald Baylor Jr., and Mr. Ernie Banks. Please step forward. On Monday, June 19, 2017, numerous St. Ignatius employees' vehicles were broken into. A security officer, Nate Oliver, responded. He observed Michael Woolard and Gerald Baylor standing in the parking lot and another person walking out of the lot. While talking to Mr. Woolard and Mr. Baylor, Security Officer Oliver realized that his car had been broken into as well. Mr. Woolard and Mr. Baylor stated to Security Officer Oliver that the person that was seen leaving the lot was inside Security Officer Oliver's vehicle and claimed that the car was his. Realizing that the person leaving the lot was a suspect, Security Officer Oliver, Mr. Woolard, Mr. Baylor, and Mr. Banks went searching for the suspect. The suspect, realizing he was being pursued, fled on foot, making several turns before hiding in a residential backyard. Mr. Woolard, Mr. Baylor, and Mr. Banks located the suspect and were struggling with him as he tried to escape. Security Officer Oliver arrived and struggled with the suspect as the suspect attempted to pull away and reach into his pocket. After a brief struggle, the suspect was secured and 2nd District officers were called to the scene. A stolen knife was recovered from the pocket the suspect was reaching for. Thanks to the efforts of Security Officer Oliver, Mr. Willard, Mr. Baylor, Mr. Banks, a career criminal was captured and stolen property was recovered. Gentlemen, thank you for your dedication. I sign him up for the police test, Chief. Receiving the Commander's Commendation is Patrol Officer Brandon Greer, and receiving the Commander's Citizen Commendation is Mr. Mario Campanelli and Mr. Edward Williams. On July 11, 2017, a 2nd District resident was savagely attacked and robbed by 5 males. Mr. Mario Campanelli, a resident of the Tremont neighborhood, witnessed the assault and came to the aid of the victim. Startled by Mr. Campanelli rushing to the scene, the cowardly suspects fled on foot. Mr. Campanelli called 911 and provided a description of the suspects to the dispatcher. Patrol Officer Brandon Greer was patrolling nearby when he heard the broadcast of the robbery in progress. Wasting no time, he began actively touring the area for the suspects, quickly locating one of the 5 as he fled through yards. Officer Greer pursued the suspect, apprehending him and recovering a cell phone and other property taken from the victim. Meanwhile, Mr. Edward Williams was bartending at a popular Tremont establishment when one of the other suspects attempted to escape detection by running through the bar. Without regard to his own safety, Mr. Williams captured and held the suspect for responding officers. Thanks to the bravery of these men, a violent beating and robbery was stopped before it became deadly, and 2 violent suspects were brought to justice. Gentlemen, thank you for your service. Receiving the Commander's Commendation is Detective Walter Emmerich and Patrol Officer David Kelly. On January 21, 2017, Crime Scene and Records Unit Detective Walter Emmerich, while working alone, was en route to an assignment when he observed 3 men violently beating and robbing another male in the 2nd District. Detective Emmerich acted quickly, exited his vehicle, and identified himself as a police officer to the 3 robbers. Upon seeing the detective, the 3 suspects fled the area on foot. Detective Emmerich immediately broadcast the suspect's description and direction of travel. Upon hearing this broadcast, Patrol Officer David Kelly, who was also working alone, responded to the area and began to tour for the suspects, eventually locating one fleeing through a nearby alley. Officer Kelly quickly apprehended the suspect, who was later identified by Detective Emmerich as one of the assailants. Following his arrest, the suspect was charged with kidnapping and robbery. Officers, thank you for your bravery and thank you for your service. And finally, receiving the Commander's Citizen Commendation, Mr. Derek Christian and Mr. Sean Ortlieb. And I don't believe either of these gentlemen could be here, but I want to read you the account. On Friday, October 21st, 2016, Derek Christian and Sean Ortlieb saw a suspect violently fighting and countering officers' attempts to secure the suspect in handcuffs. The suspect appeared to be a skilled combatant and was keeping the officers from gaining any advantage in the struggle. The officers were reaching the point of exhaustion when Mr. Christian and Mr. Ortlieb, without regard to their personal safety, intervened to assist the officers. Mr. Christian and Mr. Ortlieb assisted in holding the suspect down and gave the officers the opportunity to handcuff him. The suspect was found to have multiple felony warrants, a parole violation, and cautions attached to the warrants for violent behavior. Mr. Christian's and Mr. Ortlieb's selfless actions took a violent felon off the streets and saved our officers from serious injury or possibly death. Thank you so much.
At this point, we would like to recognize the citizens from the 2nd District Community Relations Committee. So I'll just call your name, and we have a certificate for you. Leah and Wilbur Adams, Brian Chauncey, Linda Dietrich, Chris Dunn, Jesse and Maria Holland, you guys, Linda Litto, Tammy McCoy, Peggy Neeldham, Nancy Pickering, no. Sandy Prince, Barb Renke, Cindy Rice, Carol Romano, Rose Roy, Dave Roos, Matt Russ, and Bob Shores.
So the people that we just recognized are core members of our 2nd District Community Relations Committee. They work hard every day working with our police officers, volunteering at the different community events, the different charity events that we do around the city. And we'll talk about some of those a little bit later. But if it weren't for the men and women that just walked up here and were honored, really it'd be difficult for, number one, for us to do everything we do out in the community, but also for us to connect sometimes to the community. So these people are crucial, critical. We've worked very closely, very hard with them, and I really personally owe them a debt of gratitude. So everyone, thank you.
So in addition, we also wanted to recognize the businesses and community institutions within the 2nd District that support the work of the committee and the work of the 2nd District Police. So that includes the Applewood Centers, Catholic Charities, the Cleveland Clinic, the Cleveland Police Foundation, Dave's Supermarket in Ohio City, First Interstate Properties Limited, Charles Goodrich School of Innovation, the Guardian Angels, Honey Hut Ice Cream, Jack Frost Donuts, Lutheran Hospital, McDonald's on Clark Avenue, McDonald's on Memphis Avenue, Mitchell's Ice Cream, Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church, St. Augustine Church, St. Rocco Church, St. Wendelin Parish Church, Captain Keith Sulzer, Target and Steelyard Commons, Trim Barbershop, and Urban Cuts Barbershop. Why don't we give all those community partners a hand? And with that, I will invite Michael McDonald to come up for the next presentation.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. In each of our neighborhoods throughout the second district, we are blessed to have people who work with the community development corporations that really focus on the safety concerns of the community, and it's something I did for 21 years, and I know how hard the job is, and they can't be appreciated enough. So with that, we would like to ask Adam Gifford from Metro West, Jeremy Taylor from Detroit Shoreway, Chad Biggers from Ohio City and Tremont. He's doing 2 service areas. He's got a big job. And Jeremy Taylor from Detroit Shoreway, and Barb Spahn. Barb couldn't be here tonight.
Yes, stay, please. Please stay. All right, thank you. As Michael said, the safety coordinators work very closely, again, with our officers and with my office, and particularly with our community services unit. They're employed by the various community development corporations, community development organizations that represent the various neighborhoods in the second district. Really, without these gentlemen and ladies, again, our job would be very difficult. They collate a lot of information from the various neighborhoods, talk to residents. They go to block club meetings with our officers, get that information, they pass it along, and with that we're able to formulate a response when we need to and target different neighborhoods and maybe different crimes. So they're an integral part as well of our safety team in the second district. So gentlemen and ladies, thank you. If the Guardian Angels could step forward, please. Every year the Guardian Angels continue to be and have been an integral part of the safety team here in the second district. Working closely with our officers in the second district, the Guardian Angels, led by Luis Gonzalez, who I see couldn't be here, though his son could be, are engaged in the community, serving as the eyes and ears of our officers, but also working as and serving as a force multiplier, peacekeepers, and violence interrupters. They do jobs that sometimes we can't do because we don't have the personnel. They supplement our safety force at the very critical St. Rocco's Festival. They keep an eye out at the schools at dismissal time and pass along information that makes our job easier. These men and women, many of whom volunteer their time and resources to make the community better and safer, bravely stand guardian alongside our officers. I can't thank them enough, and it's an honor to recognize the Cleveland Guardian Angels. Gentlemen, thank you. Next, we're going to recognize an officer, a citizen, and a business on behalf of the Cleveland Police Foundation. A special thanks to the Cleveland Police Foundation for what they do in helping to recognize our officers for what they've done. Do you want to say something else? Okay. Representing the Cleveland Police Foundation is Mr. Bob Gutu. Anyone who doesn't know Bob, he works very hard with the foundation, also is a retired Cleveland police officer, and really works closely with us. So we thank you, Bob, for coming out. Firstly, if Patrol Officer Hubert Kidd could step to the front of the room. Patrol Officer Hubert Kidd is a 16-year veteran of the Cleveland Division of Police, having spent his entire career assigned to the 2nd District. Always the first to volunteer for the many community events in the 2nd District, Guy, as he is called by friends, family, and colleagues, everyone but the commander, by the way, is likely the most recognizable of the 2nd District community outreach officers. Whether it is leading a group of youths in a line dance at the annual Unity in the Community celebration, shooting baskets or throwing a football with teenagers at one of the many cookouts with cops events, or reading to preschoolers at the local Head Start, Hubert daily goes out of his way to foster and promote the police-community partnership. Compassionate, friendly, and never without a smile on his face, Officer Kidd is a kid at heart and truly the epitome of a community policing officer. For his many years of dedicated service and for his commitment to the 2nd District community, it is an honor to present Patrol Officer Hubert Kidd with the 2nd District Cleveland Police Foundation Patrol Officer of the Year Award. You're welcome, my friend. They're not here. Yeah. Next up, receiving the Business Award from the Cleveland Police Foundation is L.J. Minor Corporation Incorporated. Unfortunately, a representative from that agency, from that business, couldn't be here today, but I'll read you a little commendation. The L.J. Minor Corporation has been a wonderful community partner with the 2nd District and the 2nd District Community Relations Committee. Based in Cleveland for over 60 years, L.J. Minor engages in numerous community outreach programs. As part of their community engagement, they regularly and generously donate food and drinks to our annual Children's Christmas Party. For their generosity and their commitment to the 2nd District and the 2nd District Community Relations Committee, it is an honor to recognize L.J. Minor Corporation with this year's Cleveland Police Foundation Award. And receiving the Cleveland Police Foundation Community Service Award would Ms. Rose Roy please step forward. For those of you that don't know, Rose is a longtime member of our Community Relations Committee. She also serves as treasurer on the committee and is a great help to me and to our committee. Rose Roy has been a member of the 2nd District Community Relations Committee for nearly 13 years. A lifelong 2nd District resident, Rose not only volunteers her time to assist with a number of civic causes, she has also served as a school crossing guard for the City of Cleveland for an amazing 36 years. Recently elected unopposed for the 8th straight time to serve as the Community Relations Committee Treasurer, Rose donates many hours of her precious time building the committee coffers through fundraisers and by diligently accounting for and managing funds. For her kindness, selflessness, and dedication to the 2nd District community that she calls home, it is an honor to bestow upon Rose Roy the Cleveland Police Foundation Community Service Award. Thank you, Rose. Finally, I wanted to get to special thanks. This ceremony and our various charitable ventures that our 2nd District Committee engages in would not be possible if not for the very generous service and very generous donations of some of our community partners and community benefactors. The 5 benefactors that we're going to recognize tonight generously donate thousands of dollars and precious time to assist our committee in the community. In addition to helping to fund this ceremony, and we'll enjoy a real nice meal here in a few moments, their generosity also helps support our children's Christmas party, our senior dinner, and various safety fairs around the district. So I know unfortunately, only 2 of these organizations could be here. We'll recognize all 5. The 3 that couldn't be here, unfortunately, the Great Lakes Brewing Company, very generous in their donations, Laird Technologies, and Voss Industries. So thank you to all of them. Our first honoree, if I could have Mark Owens, Director of Marketing for Skylight Financial Group, to please step forward. The Skylight Financial Group donates thousands of dollars and countless man-hours working with the 2nd District Community Relations Committee to ensure that those who might otherwise go without toys this Christmas season and the less fortunate in the City of Cleveland area are able to celebrate Christmas with a gift. Skylight Financial not only provides toys for the children of the 2nd District, they provide toys and other resources to other districts throughout the City of Cleveland. A toy, as you know, is a tool used to build a bond of trust between the Cleveland Police and at-risk youth. And if it weren't for the help and the generosity of Skylight Financial Group and Mr. Mark Owens, that might not be possible. So, Mark, thank you very much. If Mr. Neil McCormick, Chairman of Cinecraft Productions, could please step forward. Neil McCormick, along with his wife, Maria Kecken, President of Cinecraft Productions, very generously every year donates to our committee. They were really the first group that came forward, donated money that we were able to use to put actually to this very nice ceremony that we're holding here tonight. They're wonderful people, they're outstanding community partners, and they're really anchors in the Ohio City neighborhood, having served for many, many years and maintained an office and property right in the 2nd District. So for your many years of donating to our committee and for your generosity, we thank you. Thank you. And last but not least, the next individual I'm going to recognize asked me to not recognize him. He's a very humble individual, a man who dedicated many, many hours to this committee, to building bridges in the City of Cleveland between the police, between the community. He's a wonderful, wonderful community steward, a humble servant, as he's been described by people on our committee. For 8 years, Bob Shores served as co-chair. For 8 years, Bob Shores served as co-chair of our 2nd District Community Relations Committee. I can't tell you what his friendship has meant to me, and I can't tell you the praise that I've gotten from the community on his behalf. I tell Bob frequently how much he's meant to me and how much he's helped me organize the committee, keep the committee together, organize our volunteers. Everything that you see behind the scenes, Bob worked on, whether it's organizing safety fairs, the hours that he puts in using his own time and his own money, gas in his car to pick up toys to take to and from our children's Christmas party, to drive out far east to pick up stockings to distribute to children who are less fortunate and otherwise might not have a Christmas. Really, Bob has been there, and he's selfless. He doesn't ask for recognition. He told me, please don't recognize me. I couldn't do that to Bob. Bob, for 8 years of service, for your friendship to me, and for your dedication to this committee, I honor you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
That means a lot to me. It really means a lot to me. Thank you. Here you go, Bob. So thank you. That was a very nice ceremony. A few closing remarks. Again, thank you everyone for coming out. Officers, you did a wonderful job. To the families, you know, I'll steal a line from Safety Director McGrath when he was chief, and he still says it at some of our ceremonies, as does Chief Williams. You know, the family sacrifice as much as our officers every day, putting up with the crazy hours that our officers work, putting up with maybe being crabby or tired when they get home after having to work a second shift after they worked the first shift, or maybe having to stay over because they had a late arrest. So as much as we honor the officers, we honor the family members. So thank you all. And one final thought before we eat a wonderful meal by Bruno's Ristorante, who really donates a lot of food and servers to our ceremony. You know, for every, and I say this at every one of our ceremonies, for every scenario that you heard recounted here today, there are countless others and countless other officers that weren't recognized for whatever reason. Really, we could fill this room with every officer from the 2nd District, and I'd have to call the chief and the deputy chief and ask them to send me officers from around the division to pick up our workload out there, really, for all the hard work that our officers do. Officers put their lives on the line every day. I appreciate it. I know the citizens out in our community appreciate it, and I know that your leaders appreciate it. So once again, thank you for all you do. Thank you for making 2017 a successful year, and please enjoy a meal. Thank you.